Hello and welcome. I am Scrapperlock and this is City of Heroes on the Rebirth server with our level 36 Brute, Quintessence Lass, who has over 3.75 million XP earned, 852,000, nearly a million to go to get to level 37 in our next set of enhancement slots, 26 million influence, which I've traded down from Nightmare Lass so that we can get our last couple of archetype origin enhancers. I have to wait. Both Tiger Strike and this character are still on the 4-day limit, so it'll be another day or two. But within another episode or two, we should have enough to get these last two archetype origin enhancements, and then we're done with that, and we can start working on sets. In the meantime, we're doing a story arc for Anton Samson. The story arc is called Mass Duplicity Against the Nemesis, and Anton says that he's had Lisa Colbert decrypt that packing slip we found at the Nemesis front company, Gordonless Imports. It pinpoints the warehouse that Nemesis automatons are coming from. I really feel like we're closing in on the strange prototype. Go raid the place. And this is another place in Steel Canyon, right near the train station, so we'll head over. Somebody died? Level 31 character? What happened? Don't know about that. How did you die in the train station? No villains could come in here. It's got, you know, it's got the little police drones. Unless he was maybe ambushed? But he shouldn't have been ambushed on that side. He should have been ambushed on the exit side, right? We go up here. There are two sides to the train station. This is the entrance that you leave from, departures. This is arrivals. So if he was killed by an ambush, he should have been killed over here. That's weird. I don't know how anyone accidentally dies in there. I don't think you can get into open PvP in the middle of the train station. So I don't know. Don't know what happened there. Well, speaking of dying, you don't really die in City of Heroes. You get defeated and have to go to the hospital or take a res pill or something. Speaking of that, there's an interesting thread on the D&D Beyond forums regarding Advanced Dungeons and Dragons. And the one guy said, you know, who still loves it and kind of misses it? Let's talk about AD&D. And a bunch of people chimed in. One guy even said, and I find this really interesting and not surprising, because the original D&D was a pretty darn good game. If it hadn't been, it wouldn't have lasted long enough to become a 5th edition. So he said that the one guy said that he and his friends, for fun, about a year and a half ago, dug out the old boxed basic and expert set, and they grabbed, I don't know, Village of Hamlet, which is supposed to be done in AD&D, but you can kind of do, you know, whatever. You can do it either way. I mean, it works. The games work pretty similarly. Hit dice and damage and the armor class all kind of mean the same thing in both games. And he said they dug out the Village of Hamlet and they played it, and they've never looked back. They've been playing basic expert D&D since a year and a half ago, and they're like, you know, they're so much happier with it than with 5th edition that they've all like given away or sold their 5th edition books, which I think is really interesting, and doesn't completely surprise me. I'm going to abandon this guy and go after this next spawn, because otherwise he's going to juice this guy, the Grenadier. And now he's going to juice this guy. Of course, as he keeps following me and gets closer and closer to other guys, he's going to juice them. So we're going to take this guy out, and then we're going to walk back this way. Just sort of pull him back over. Come here. Just so that he can't buff anybody, because it's just such a pain to try to hit them when they're buffed like that. So, you know, it's really interesting and I actually said, boy, I would love to play AD&D. But I don't think any of my friends that play D&D with me would want to. I know the one guy, my best friend, who is the one who learned D&D with me, absolutely 100% will never, ever, ever be able to be convinced to play first edition. You might be able to convince him to play third because he really liked third, but there's no way he's ever going to play first because he just thinks it wasn't a very good game. It was all there was back in the day, but everything's much better now, and he doesn't like, you know, some of the mechanics. He doesn't absolutely hates limitations, and AD&D was full of limitations of what class you could be, what race you could be, what your alignment could be. He doesn't like that. Why can't there be a non-neutral druid? Why can't there be a non-good paladin? And you could, homebrew that kind of stuff. And there were some Dragon Magazine articles about how to do that. But there are all these implicit limitations in the game system, and he doesn't like limitations. He prefers it to be more open. Um, he also is very much in love with the idea of using the newest, latest, and greatest. In fact, he started playing COH, and I'm frankly shocked that he ever did, because COH is an old game. And when I told him it was coming back, he even said, like, why play? And then I guess he finally said, well, it's free, let me try it. And yeah, he played it at least for a good year. I don't know if he still does. And and he enjoyed it. I mean, it is a good game. But he and I always talk about, like, he thinks, and he's probably right, that I'm like nostalgia boy. I love anything that's old school. Um, and that's true. But he detests anything that's old school. He always wants to play the newest version of everything, to have the newest version of everything. He always assumes newer is better, which sometimes it is when the developers of a game learn from their mistakes and improve a product. Sure, it can be better. But a lot of times what happens is the old school product was high quality and the newer product was made on the cheap. This happens a lot, that the old quality was actually really good. If you look at like IBM computers, it used to be that IBM was the Cadillac of desktop computers. When desktop computers first came out, if you didn't have an IBM, you had nothing. Your computer might not even work right. Now, who the heck buys an IBM? You just don't. There are much better computer making companies out there, and so having a new IBM isn't necessarily very good. It's better, at least in terms of what it can do, than an old IBM, but not better in terms of quality, in terms of how long it'll last. And I mean, they used to say that they're built like tanks, and they stopped being built like tanks a long time ago. So it's not necessarily always higher in quality, and a lot of times older stuff was better built and better made. I think there's no question that the house I grew up in, which was built in the 1920s, it may not have been manufactured using modern building techniques, but it was manufactured with way better quality than my current house, which may have been manufactured by modern techniques, but it was also put up, like cookie cutter, super fast by the builder, trying to get it done as fast as possible so that they could make as much money as possible. It doesn't mean the guys in the 20s who built our old house weren't trying to make money. Of course they were, but there was a certain level of craftsmanship that you just don't see in modern home building, and certainly not in my existing house. So anyway, I tend to have a lot of nostalgia for old things, and I like and miss some of the old play style, and he doesn't. So I guarantee 100%, if I said, let's now, once we're done with fifth edition, let's play a campaign of AD&D. I think the new player is completely up for it because she's curious about how she's heard a lot of stories about it, and she's curious of how it plays, right? And she'd be willing to try it. I think the one guy who never plays with us anymore because of his family issues, I think he would probably. Oh, hang on, I got to pause here. Sorry, my friend just messaged me. He wants to test something in Foundry. I told him he's gonna have to wait a few minutes. Um, I hear another glowy. We were talking about, oh yes, the one guy who isn't DMing because of his family issues. He would probably be happy to do it. He likes all kinds of games, and he, I think he would be willing to try playing some AD&D. I don't know about the other players. I know one of the other players played second edition and possibly third and fifth. Don't know how much she likes the older versions. I have no idea. I also wouldn't mind trying some of the newer, more modern, old school revival games. Here's one of the clues we're looking for. Um, Something like Lion and Dragon or Dungeon Crawl Classics or something. I feel like Dungeon Crawl Classics might be a little too gonzo for my taste. But there are other games systems that are kind of OSR and are not like Dungeon Crawl Classics. I think the main kind of translation that I would prefer compared to like AD&D is the way armor class works. I think armor class going up rather than down, and what you roll plus your bonus being what you need to hit is so much easier than trying to deal with rolling numbers, and you need to roll high to hit a low armor class, and you have to then add the extra step of going through a chart, right, to see if your 17 hits a -2 armor class, rather than just saying it's a 17 armor class, it hits. And so a lot of the old school revival type games, one of the changes that they have made is to do that. And so I think like Old School Essentials, I think does that, and a couple of the other old school revival type games. So I wouldn't mind doing that instead of AD&D. That we would maybe play something like Old School Essentials instead, which would allow us to play the same game and all the modules, but it would allow us to sort of do away with that annoying hairball of a table that you need to use, where you have to like do a lookup table to figure out whether you hit something instead of just knowing that I hit armor class of whatever I rolled. And there's a Warhulk. Let's go get him. He's a +2 boss, so he shouldn't be too bad to fight. Here's another example, though, with Soul Drain. Yeah, I can use it, but there's only one guy here. So it's not going to do me as much good as it would if there were multiple guys. So anyway, we were talking about... I brought this up talking about dying, right? We were talking about the old school games and AD&D, and I said, one of the things that I actually miss about AD&D and old school D&D is poison. Like, there really isn't any such thing as poison in 5th edition. They call it poison, but it's a lie. It's not actual poison. When you are poisoned, quote unquote, you just have disadvantage on your skill checks and your saving throws and stuff, and your attacks. Okay, that's a bad penalty, but you're not poisoned. Well, poison kills you, right? Or does serious damage to like your organs, permanent damage. Poison is really bad in like real life, and it's one of the weakest effects in D&D. Almost any other effect you can name in Dungeons and Dragons is actually worse for your character than poison. And most poisons, you just recover them from taking a long rest. So it's more like food poisoning than like strychnine, right? You get the equivalent of nauseated. And as a matter of fact, when I've had my players be in sewers, I've had them roll Constitution saving throws, and if they fail, they have the effect of being poisoned until their long rest, and then they roll it again, right? And once they succeed, they've kind of acclimated to the the smell of the sewer, and they're no longer poisoned. And I chose the poison effect because its effects are kind of like being sick to your stomach, right? You have disadvantage on everything, but you can still do everything. You're not dying. You don't like. There is essentially no need in Dungeons and Dragons for anyone to ever have an antidote to anything, because poison cannot kill you, and eventually you'll just get better. So it's more like having a cold than being poisoned. And I really wish there still were some possible effects of actual poison. I mean, like, it should still be possible to put poison in the Emperor's, I don't know, flatbread or wine or pork pork chops or whatever, and kill the Emperor of Rome. And you can't. All it would do is just make him sick to his stomach for a couple days, and then he gets better. And that's just crazy to me. I really wish there was an actual poison effect. We're heading for the train station here. Oh, look at that! I forgot all about this. So this is the you can watch it with Silver Phoenix's stream, but this is every once in a while they'll randomly have a building go catch on fire in this zone, and there's a little fireman that hands out fire hoses and stuff, and you can put the fire out. And if you have ice powers and stuff, you can put them out as well. Certain buildings do it. This is one of them, right here. You can see it because they look a little different from the other buildings, and they all have a very distinctive color and shape. And that's pretty cool. I like that. That was a new thing they added to the game that was really neat. It made you feel heroic. All right, let's talk to our contact. You shut down Gordonless Imports hard, Quintessence Lass. I think your next stop should be the Central Information Storehouse you learned of. Maybe there's something there that will lead us to the final destination of the prototype. And so he says, I've been able to pin down the location of too fast. I've been able to pin down the location of the Nemesis Records Storehouse. This could be big, Quintessence Lass. There's a good chance that the place contains information that can shut down a lot of nefarious Nemesis plots. Are you ready? We are ready. Defeat all soldiers in the office in Brickstown. We will teleport to that. I'm going to pause right here, and I will bring you back in just a moment. Okay, we are back. Defeat all soldiers in the office. Hopefully this won't be a huge one, because I do need to get together with my friend and test something in Foundry. He's been having trouble importing his character, and so I think he could actually try it without me, but I want to make sure I'm there so I can see what's going on and check the error messages and ask for help if it turns out that he's not able to get his character imported. So yeah, there's certain things I really liked in the old school. I'm not a huge fan of the save or die mechanic for a lot of things, but I think for poison, it actually, you need something, some kind of a mechanic where, I don't know, if you fail your save 3 times in a row, you die, or something. Or where every time you fail the save, it does damage to you. And of course, if it does enough damage to you, you go to 0 hit points and you're dying. Something. Because most of the time, oh look, boss. Most of the time, poison in D&D is just nothing. It just doesn't do enough. Like, I asked the question, why would anybody ever bother to poison needle trap a chest? All it's going to do is make the guy who opened the chest sick to his stomach. It's not going to stop him from taking your treasure. The normal reason you put a poison needle trap on your treasure chest is because you put some sort of a quick acting poison, like cyanide, in the needle, right? And then when you prick yourself, by the time you open the chest and take everything out, you're going to be dead. Right? And then they'll just find your dead body amongst their treasure, and they haven't lost their treasure. Right? I mean, that's the whole purpose of a poison needle trap. If it's just going to make you sick to your stomach, why put a poison needle trap on a chest? It doesn't stop anybody. So I've been actually really disappointed um, with things like that in D&D. I feel like it just completely negates the power of poison. And I feel like in a fantasy game where there are swords and armor and dragons, there also ought to be poison, like actual poison that can work and potentially kill you. You should theoretically fear poison, and I can't see why anyone would. And we're low on endurance right now because I stupidly left super jump on. You can taunt this guy over, and maybe if he comes over here, we can get some endurance from him too. Oh gosh, there's another Warhulk. That was a mistake. Oops. Alright. Well, we're definitely going to be able to do an AoE. But this is not good. That was dumb. I didn't realize we are going to have this many Warhulks in here. This is awesome. This is a cool fight. I like this. Okay, that Warhulk is going to blow up. Let's hope he doesn't. No, he hit me. But now we should be alright. We're on nearly full endurance and nearly full health. And this Warhulk is being debuffed, so we're good. The other guy can't do anything to me. So yeah, I mean, I understand why they don't have a save or die mechanic, but there should be some sort of way to get poison to actually work. If you think about how they still do petrifying, like turning to stone, and the way it works is you get two saves, right? You get the first save. If you fail it, then you are like restrained, and your movements are slowed, and it's like you're going in slow motion. And then if you fail it the second time, then you get turned to stone. So you have to kind of fail it twice. I could see doing that with poison. Like if you fail it, you get the poisoned effects where you're nauseated, whatever. If you fail it the second time, then you die, right? I could see doing something like that so that poison could actually work, but it's not an instant save or die. And maybe that there's some time period between, so it's like, okay, you're nauseated till you take a long rest, and then when you take a long rest, at the end of the long rest, you try to save again, and if you fail it, you die, right? The poison has taken hold. And that would then give the party time to find an antidote, find a cleric to like remove poison, cure poison, whatever, restoration. It would give the party time to like find a medic or whatever you want to call it. And I think that would be more. I would prefer something like that to just all poison, all of it, every kind of poison there is. The only effect it can have is to make you sick to your stomach, basically. Gives you disadvantage. Now, theoretically, you can put something in there that says save versus poison, or take a certain number of d6 and be poisoned. So theoretically, that could drop the person to 0 and make them make death saving throws. But a poison needle isn't going to do that much damage. It's the poison that's supposed to kill you, not the needle prick. And so, I mean, I guess you could fake it But I just wish there was some sort of a mechanic that was built into the game. Do I hear it glowy? That made poison more dangerous. And I feel like a lot of the effects like that are too video gamey. I remember in Neverwinter Nights, for example, when my character got poisoned and I was used to first edition D&D, and I was like, oh man, I'm poisoned, and you know, your hit points bar turns like green, and you know, things are pretty bad. And then you would just take a rest, and there would be this little like cloud of dust, and you would lose a chunk of your hit points, but then the poison status is over. And I was like, oh, that's great. The poison isn't like killing me, and that's fine for a video game, but they've kind of turned that kind of thing into the default way that D&D works now, and that's true for many of the effects that used to be potentially very dangerous. They just really don't do anything to the characters anymore, which means the players don't have to fear them. You could just open chests of treasure with impunity without detecting traps, because most of the traps are just toothless. And most of the effects you can just get rid of by taking a long rest, which is, again, very video gamey. Right? Just like here, you take a knee and you're done. No matter what they've done to me, I can just take a knee and my health goes all the way up to full. Now, for superheroes, that makes sense, but for a fantasy game, to me, not so much. Yeah, I really do prefer the old school way of doing it, and yeah, if I had my druthers, I think my next campaign would be old school D&D, or some more old school type game, or a different game. I mean, I'm fine playing something like Call of Cthulhu as well, you know, but 40. Why are they giving me +4s in this game, in this mission? This is crazy. No wonder I can't hit. 40s. They really should not be giving. This is a +2 mission, guys. +2. Why are they giving me +4s? That's ridiculous. No wonder I'm missing so much. And this is one of the problems with the high level stuff, is that once it's purple, there's no other color, right? And the +3s are already purple. Look at this. To take out one lieutenant, it's worse than a boss, because he's +4 to me. And another guy who's +4, and that's just ridiculous. Yeah, so the +3s are already purple. Right, a +0 lieutenant is yellow, +1 is orange, +2 is red, +3 is already purple. So when I saw purples, I didn't register that they were +4s, because I'm used to the purples for +3s. So there's one more clue, and a bunch more nemesis, all of whom... Okay, these guys are +3s. That's really weird, because this is the same room, and usually in the same room, the spawns are the same level. There was a guy right down there, I mean, like right there, who was +1 to these guys, which is very strange. So we have the asterisk, but there's really kind of no point to worrying about it right now, because we have to defeat everybody in here. So we need to make sure that we've covered the whole place. Looks good. Looks like we've covered it. I mean, I think the fact that there's very little chance of death in, at least in the rules as they are written in new D&D, is also partially a legacy of the video game generation, right? Because there's no permadeath in video games most of the time, because it would be too harsh a punishment in a setting like this where, a couple of little misclicks can cause your character to die. Another Warhulk. Can we get both of these guys in the Soul Drain? I think so, yeah. So this is Record Keeper Overstreet, who's only +2 to me. We should have his to hit pretty far down there. Yeah, he's down to 16%, so that's good. So he's not going to be hitting me much. Ouch, that hurt. So that heal is now on a 1-minute recharge, and Soul Drain's on about a 1 minute and 15-second recharge. This character is completely kicking butt and taking names. Last clue. And that's the mission, guys. Out we go. Well, we're already 2 beads into this level. He says, we just won a huge battle in the war against Nemesis Quintessence last. These records you found should shut down a lot of the infiltration ops going on in the city, but I think what you've learned about that prototype may be even more important. We knew it was a weapon, but I didn't think it would be a Nemesis battle suit. Nemesis often used duplicates of his own armor as heavy support troops for his soldiers. Yep, this is where we start finding out about the false Nemesis. But we're going to do that next time, guys. I think that's the end of this episode. Until next time, I am Scrapperlock, and this is City of Heroes.